for me, like, I hear so much of my influence. Like, I love stacking vocals, and that comes from Marvin Gaye. Like, I just love stacking vocals, and I love the call and response of church, and I love the piano from. So it's all those. So my production technique is black music.
Oh, there you go. Hi, I'm Colleen Cosmo Murphy, and welcome to our first Producer Pioneers event presented by Classic Album Sundays and Resident Advisor with support from Audio Technica and Danley Sound Labs. This 4-event series aims to inspire, educate, and celebrate the next generation of women producers and the women producers who exist today. And it's also here to drive change. Although there are steps taken towards a more balanced industry, today only a staggering 6% of producers identify as women, proving that there's still a huge bridge to gap until we're closer to a more equal and democratic situation. All sorts of barriers are faced by many women artists, including tokenism, lack of access to resources, and also lack of confidence when dealing with a majority male landscape. Producer Pioneers aims to be a part of the solution. Now, tonight, we are kicking off the series with someone who is an inspiration to so many and whose talent, intelligence, and hard graft has made her one of the top DJs in the world. And she is authentic. She is the real deal. Please give it up for Honey Dijon.
Testing one. Wow, that introduction was fierce.
You're fierce.
Oh,
you deserve a fierce introduction.
Thank you. Just so you guys know, we have history. Like, I used to go record shopping in New York before I started DJing, and she worked at Dance Tracks, and it was one of the most legendary record stores in New York. So it's kind of a full circle moment for us.
It is. It really is. It's lovely to sit here with you 25
Yes.
Anyways. Well, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Awesome,
I really appreciate it on a personal level. Today we're talking about women producers, women who make music, women who are the ones, not necessarily the artists on the microphone or the one playing the instruments, but the people who are doing all the kind of nuts and bolts in the background. Even if you're working with an engineer, you're still producing. You know what kind of sounds that you want to achieve. You really know how you want to put this all together and what your end result, what you want it to be. So tonight we're really focusing on that part of your artistry. And at first, we're going to take a listen and look of some of the producers that have really inspired you. And I'm so over the moon because some of them are from the 1980s and producers that I grew up listening to. So this is wonderful.
Yeah, you know, I was born I could have been born in any time and place, but I think I was born in a really great time in music. My music education came from my parents. Like any African-American household, there was music when you went to the grocery store, there was music when you cleaned the house, there was music when you had barbecues and picnics and everything. So I credit my parents with giving me my first musical education, and, you know, growing up with Donny Hathaway and Stevie Wonder and Donna Summer and the Whispers and the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind and Fire, and, you know, it was so rich. And I call it conscious music because it was right after the civil rights movement, and a lot of that music was being made. This Philly sound, the beginnings of disco. And this is a true story. My mother hates this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. My parents had me when they were fairly young, so they used to have basement parties. And so they used to let me play records an hour before my bedtime because I was so excited about music and I wanted to show people. And I used to love hearing the glasses clank and people cussing and talking shit, you know, like black people do. And I was like, this is my world. And so that was my education to music, and that's what sparked my passion for it, you know, for my parents. And then, you know, being in Chicago at the beginning of house music culture that's another story. But yeah, my parents.
That's wonderful. My parents, I didn't grow up in that kind of a musical household, but my daughter certainly is. So that amending that. Let's go through some of the songs that you chose as songs that you really admired and were inspired by the actual production values. And the first one that you picked is one of my favorites, Prince, Erotic City.
Yeah, the funny thing is that that was a house music record because Derek Carter, who's my best friend, he's one of the best DJs in the world. And, a lot of people, I think, misunderstand what house music is because it's so shiny and commodified and commercial now. But back then, there was no borders. It was music without borders. So you would hear acid track. And the thing about Chicago DJs is that we do a lot of layering and a lot of long blending, and we like to mix genres because there were so many talented DJs. Like, how did you stand out? So B-sides, and Erotic City was a B-side. And so I found out about Prince through, it's the B-side of this one, Let's Go Crazy. Like, I never didn't like Let's Go Crazy, but Erotic City was the jam. Yeah. And we would jack to that. And before jacking, so there's a long story. Before jacking, it was called punking out because the New York new wave scene was really influential in early house music. And so Prince, was a part of that. And so that's my introduction to Prince, Erotic City, next to Acid House.
Well, it's a really avant-garde kind of production as well because it's quite simple, just how it starts. And there's a lot of space in there.
It's like post-disco too. It's a lot of new wave. It was a lot of things. There were two records that in America were the two big Prince records in Chicago. But that one was particularly relevant because also the lyrics. Because, most people forget it wasn't just the music. It was also the songwriting and the lyrics and what he was talking about. And it was like listening to someone on acid. Yeah. And so, Acid House, Acid, Prince.
And it's Sheila E.
And Sheila E. Yeah.
And of course they said, that word's not fuck, it's funk. We can funk until the dawn. And because
we can funk. Yeah, people say we can fuck it till the dawn, but it was we can funk until the dawn.
Exactly, it's because it was nearly banned. But then
my ecstasy wasn't that bad.
They're saying funk, But what is it about the production on this song that you really love?
I think it was just so esoteric for me, and it was like anything I heard before. And like I said, it was a combination of new wave and post-disco and soul, but it sounded progressive. And it was at the beginning of a lot of early synth music too that was infiltrating early house music. So it was based in funk, but it was new technology. It was just it just was just so new. Yeah. So that's what did it for me.
Yeah. Well, let's have a listen.
Yeah.
Erotic City, come alive. We can fuck it till the dawn, making love till cherries dawn. Erotic City, can't you see? Fuck so pretty, you and me. Every time I comb my hair, thoughts of you get in my eyes. You're a sinner, I don't care. I just want your creamy thighs.
The thing that's interesting, the sped up vocals and how he's using different sounds. The Lynn drum machine sounds like there as well. It's really, really an interesting
that snare. I don't think
production.
There's any other human being on earth that is related to that snare than Prince.
Exactly. Yeah. Now your next one is another one of my favorite records because Trevor Horn was definitely one of the producers who soundtracked my teenagehood. And, it was the second British invasion. We were really lucky. I mean, it was so great being a teenager in the 80s and hearing these amazing records. And Trevor Horn, along with his Fairlight programmer, J.J. Jexalik, and his chief engineer, Stephen Lipson, they had worked in SARM Studios, and they put out some of the greatest pop records in the 1980s. Think ABC, Lexicon of Love. We think of Propaganda. We think of Grace Jones.
Slave to the Rhythm.
Slave to the Rhythm, exactly. And of course, Art of Noise, which they did with Paul Morley and Ann Dudley. But also Frankie Goes to Hollywood. So tell us why you love this record so much.
So I'm sure all of you are familiar with Frankie Knuckles and Ron Hardy. Ron Hardy was the resident DJ at the Music Box, and Frankie Knuckles was Warehouse. So anyway, The difference between the two, I always like to call Frankie Knuckles, he was the Black Science Orchestra because he was really a descendant of disco. South Soul, Prelude, West End, strings, vocals, horns. And Ron Hardy was the one that was playing a lot of synth pop, and he had a heroin addiction, so he always thought things sounded really slow. So he would speed things up because, I'll let you take it from there. But when Frankie Goes to Hollywood, for me, was the total package, The thing about early house music culture, and like most subcultures, there were all these different tribes and different ways of dressing and different music. And I used to take the bus to the mall to buy my records. And the first record I ever bought with my own money was Bostage by Yellow. And I still have that 12-inch. But there was always a sense of theater and the intro, Holly's delivery, "The world is my oyster," and this wicked laugh, and it was just like you just went into another place. And the production was like opera. It was so incredible. Sonically, you could play that. I heard Grace Jones actually went to the Paradise Garage with Trevor Horn, and they created that album and heard it on the Paradise Garage sound system.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was such the best sound system in New York.
Yeah.
And so this record to me is like orchestration and opera, and if you just buy this album for the graphics alone, it was a gatefold. There was all this symbolism. Holly Johnson used to wear Jean-Paul Gaultier, and he used to have this really slow drawl and this really weird dance, and he wore gloves, and Grace Jones wore. So I'm digressing and fangirling out right here, but because for me there was never any. I like to think of myself as an art school fan. I'm a professional fan. People call me a DJ. I'm a fucking professional fan. And so,
me too, even
I get paid to geek out. That's, And so I would just sit and watch. Oh, and Sade wore gloves, and Grace wore gloves, and Holly Johnson wore gloves. But it was a house record. Like, all this stuff was played in house music because it was music without borders. And you would hear, like, "Oh, Mickey" by Tony Basil was a house record. And you would hear next to Early Mr. Fingers and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, "Mesopotamia" by the B-52s. Front 242, which is a huge inspiration for Green Velvet. Chicago was such a multicultural place for music. I went to the industrial clubs as well as the video clubs, as well as the gay black clubs, the gay white clubs, which they would kick me out for voguing and carrying on and all sorts of things. But the gay white clubs was my introduction to erasure and to high energy. And so Frankie Goes to Hollywood, when I saw that, I was just blown away because it connected fashion, art school band, sonics, lyrics, debauchery, relax. I don't know if you remember, the video was basically a leather club. The first video was banned and it was a leather club. Sex. I don't know about you, but there's no sex in house music anymore, and I really miss the sexual element. Dance music has become so fucking sanitized that we don't have sex anymore, so I love sex and music.
Well, Relax was actually banned.
Relax was Relax, don't do it till you want to come, and pull up to the bumper in your long black lemons. I mean, what do we have now? No one talks about sex. Well, Megan Thee Stallion, but it's not dance music, so. Well, it's a form of dance, but it's not house music. So, anyway.
Well, let's have a listen. I have to cue this one up by eye. I have the 12-inch.
It's a long intro, so it's like foreplay.
I might just.
I still get goosebumps when it's like my teenage self still freaks out when I hear that. But I'm going to give you a little secret. You know who sold me my first Frankie Goes to Hollywood record? Jesse Saunders.
Really?
At Rose Records when I was like 11 years old.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you know who got me that copy?
Who?
My grandfather.
Oh,
I'm not even joking. I put it on my Christmas list in 1984. So that's from my grandfather. So Jesse Saunders and Grandpa Anderson.
I don't know where to go with that, but But yeah, that's how I got relaxed, and then that's how my Frankie introduction, because it was the album cover when the girl was on the back, and
yeah. I mean, the thing that's so amazing about this production, it's almost like an '80s version of Phil Spector's Wall of Sound.
It's insane.
It's dense. There's this panning going on.
Four to the floor, but it was still a house record, but you still had all this opera at the beginning and the rock guitar, and it was just
drama.
Still disco, and it was just
Lots
the
of
80s.
drama.
I love the 80s.
Yeah, but lots of drama, and I hear that in your work.
Well, you know, I think of clubbing as theater. You know, it's a place for people to go and be who they really want to be. So, in my opinion.
Well, that kind of leads us on to the next record, actually, by Green Velvet, which is all about the clubs. And I have the worst pressing imaginable.
Nitrous.
So I feel quite bad. When you listen to, be like, oh, you just listen to like the Trevor Horn, and now you're going to be listening to something that doesn't sound quite as clean. But let's talk about, I mean, Green Velvet, Kashmir, he's a huge inspiration, a Chicago man, a real DIY kind of guy as well, producing his early records. So 1991 was Brighter Days, and then he starts Casual Records, and really interesting.
Prescription. So I kind of met everyone just from hanging out, because I was a club dancer before I became a DJ. So Casual Records was also where Prescription was, and also where Guidance was. And so I kind of I still have all the white labels of everything. Isn't that crazy? Because I would just steal them. And Derek Carter worked there, and DJ Sneak worked there. And so it was a community then. Like, these were all like inner city black kids just making music for the club. And I still don't know what machines Cash used, because it shit sounds so clean and fresh. I mean, the record might not, but the production quality is still incredible. But this record was made during rave days when everyone did nitrous. Does anyone know what nitrous is?
They do here. You see them all over.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, I think in order to be a good DJ, you kind of have to know what everyone is on in order to connect. So you just kind of have to try stuff. But so this whole thing was about, I never did balloons. I always thought it was tacky. I preferred to do other stuff. Like people in the corner, I'm like, what are you doing? Like sucking on a balloon. But so that's what this, and this still sounds like nothing today. It is nothing today.
Yeah, and it's really quite harsh too. Like the sounds are really, really crunchy,
aggressive,
and very aggressive. Yeah. In fact, you were talking before about Wax Trax and Al Jorgensen.
Right.
So similar.
Yeah. So okay, that's another story. I wait till the book comes out. There's many chapters. But when I used to take the bus, there was I lived on the south side. That was the black part of town. I went to go to the north side, and there was Wax Trax Records, and that's where I found out about Dead or Alive and Ministry and ID, The Face magazine, all of that sort of stuff. And so, Front 242, the Cramps. Yeah. And I used to go to industrial clubs, and one song that did not make the album, I did a track with Nitzer Ebb, with Douglas McCarthy. It didn't make the album just because it just didn't fit, but I'm a huge industrial Nitzer Ebb fan, so Green Velvet is part of that. Green Velvet is really Grace Jones, Nitzer Ebb, and Front 242, if you really want to know.
That's really a good way of putting it. Let's have a listen. Yeah. I'm going to skip in a tiny bit because the outside of my record's all quite scratched.
No, play the crunchy part. That's real.
Cameras ready, prepare to flash.
It's such a gag that this record is almost 30 fucking years old. Like, I played it at Berghain a couple of months ago, and everyone lost their shit. So it's a great record.
And what about the production appeals to you?
I don't know what the fuck he did. I don't know what anything he used on that record at all, and it's still a mystery to me, and he won't tell anyone. So.
Well, I can hear, like on some of your stuff, I can hear that kind of that Chicago kind of the
swing,
the swing, absolutely, the bumpiness.
But also, when you think about it, that also goes back to like, it sounds like that could be a preacher at a church preaching to,
Well, he had that preacher man.
Preacher man too, yeah. I mean. So, I mean, it ties back into black music. And, that's why I think for me as a DJ, I've come to the realization that what I do is I just present black music from gospel to disco to techno to house to the whole jazz. I love jazz. So, yeah.
Well, the next producer, I would say, is the one that I think has inspired you the most.
Yeah.
If I'm
You're
being kind of
correct.
bold, is it true?
Yeah, Mr. Danny Tenaglia.
Danny Tenaglia. What a wonderful man. A wonderful producer, too. I mean, he was making some great house records in the early 90s, like 1990, 91, Soul Boy, Harmonica Track, Code 718, Equinox, and the thing that I love about his productions was that balance between the soulful prettiness and then the tough.
And he changed my ear, especially coming from Chicago, which was a lot of disco bass, swingy things, loops of that nature. And he was a resident DJ at a club called Twilo. Frankie Knuckles was actually the resident before Danny became the resident. And that's when he brought in this whole European sound that I had never heard before. He was playing like Maurizio records, and
I sold him that record.
You sold M7 or M5?
He was my customer. Yeah.
And so that's the first time I heard Maurizio, and then that was the first time I heard Christopher Just. I'm just a disco dancer, and then the first time I heard Miss Kitten. Frank Sinatra, and then when he was bringing Gigolo records to New York. I mean, you have to understand, New York was still Shelter and disco, and he brought all this European music, and it blew my mind, and it literally changed how I listened to dance music, because I hadn't heard records, and on that sound system, it was just mind-blowing. And so his first album was Hard and Soul, and then his second one was Tourism, where he worked with Liz Torres, Jojo America. He redid Headhunter. The album still to me is a masterpiece, and Be Yourself. No, Be Yourself isn't on that. Is Be Yourself on that one? No, I don't know. Anyway, but he really changed my life, literally. And this is when you would go to the club at 3:00 in the morning, and because the DJ didn't get hot until 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Literally, like you would like go to sleep, get up at 1.
Disco nap.
And you go to the club at 3, you meet your friends, and then you didn't really do anything until 6. Because all the bridge and tunnel had gone, and the real true clubbers were there at 6. That's like when I DJ, the people that are there at the end, to me, that's the party. Everyone else wants to be entertained, but the people that stay till 6, that's the party.
That's when you can go deep.
Yeah, that's when you go deep.
Absolutely.
But so he's really influenced me, and he made a term that I've sort of co-opted. He called his music progressive soul. Because it was progressive forward thinking, but it also had that soulful element. So, yeah.
Well, do you want to talk about this record?
Oh my God, this is just like chiffon. It's just like, I just feel like I'm in the backseat of a car, and just a chiffon scarf is blowing in the wind, and I have my poodle next to me, and I'm just living my best life on a highway, and just feeling fierce and gorgeous and heaven. The song is called Heaven, literally. So, yeah.
'Cause I still believe there's no lover better than you. There's no doubt I'd rather heaven right next to you. Nothing better than love, won't shout it out. You're the kind of lover I can't do without.
What I learned from Danny and all of these producers is to let the music breathe, and space and sonic space. And it's another thing that I also learned, like listening to a lot of Quincy Jones talks, leaving that space, the music in between the music, the silence in between the music is also an instrument. And that's what creates tension and drama. And so that's a production technique that I like to incorporate, a lot of space, and let the music breathe and grow and build that tension.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the space between the notes. I think
Space
that was a
between the
Miles
notes,
Davis,
yeah.
Claude Debussy
That's where the
quote.
magic is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, the engineer on that record is Rob Reeves,
Yes.
who we know used to work at Access for Francois
Yes.
K. So it's a very clean, another thing when you're using fewer instruments and fewer sounds, you perfect each sound,
Yeah.
and you make sure that it's not kind of bumping up against the other one.
Well, I mean, what you leave out is almost as important as what you put in. And there's a real craft in editing. And for me, that's where the magic happens, is the editing of, because you can put everything in the kitchen sink in, but I find that it's just like when you don't have something to say, you put too much in. So getting to the essence of what you're trying to say with the song or production is that's where it's at for me.
Well, let's talk about your productions
Well, let's get into
now that we've
that.
kind of set this all up and we've listened to some
The
of your
best
favorite
music.
producers, how did you start producing records? Was it something that you decided you wanted to do and went out and pursued it, or did somebody ask you?
It's the same way I started DJing. It was out of necessity because, like I said, growing up in Chicago, I had this rich musical tapestry to get involved in. And when I went to New York, I found it to be so segregated. You went to this shelter for the soulful thing. You went to Sound Factory for the tribal thing. You went to Save the Robots for the techno thing. And I didn't grow up with those borders. And so I started DJing on a Monday night for $60. It's true. Danny Tenaglia gave me my first 2-channel Radio Shack mixer. Literally, because I said, I wanted to DJ, and so he gave me this shitty mixer. I had a belt-driven turntable, because I was broke as hell. So I used to speed records up with my finger and slow them down. So when I went to the club, I would, try to jostle the beats and stuff like that. And so I started producing. So imagine your best friend is Derek Carter, and then you become friends with Danny Tenaglia, and it's like, what the fuck am I'm going to make a record. But I had all of this musical passion in me that I wanted to express. And before Ableton, or DAWs, which is digital audio workstations, I would go to Derek's house and he had all these synths, and I was like, what the fuck is that? I couldn't get my head around it. But when Ableton came around, and it's a loop-based software, I got it. Because I was sort of like thinking of making a record as a dancer on the floor, and what excited me, what didn't, where the tension was, where it wasn't. And I said, I can loop a kick drum for like 10 minutes. And, I can mute this and put this in and take this out. And so I really taught myself based on, and Danny Tenaglia said, to make a record, take all your favorite records and take what you like about them and then put them together. And that's what I did. So I would take a little bit of a disco vocal from this record. I'd take the drum loop from that. I would take the highs from that. And I would just cut and paste and mute and unmute. Mute is your friend. Like, do. And then I learned how to use filters, open and close filters, closed hats, open hats. What's the difference between a closed hat and an open hat? And you just, just from, what would this feel like on the dance floor? Because like getting back to what you said earlier, hire engineers. You don't need to do everything. I really believe, for me, I'm more concerned about how something feels, and then I'll pass it on to someone that geeks out on how something sounds. Because I think the human connection is what I'm really trying to convey. And so I learned the basics of how to sketch a song. I think you still need to learn how to actually make a track. But then I would hand it off to the masters that want to sit and work on a kick drum for 7 hours, because I don't. You know what I mean?
What's your favorite part of making music then?
Discovery. Accidents. Well, there are no accidents, but I think my favorite part of, it took me a long time to get the confidence to make a record. What did I want to say? What was important for me to say? And I just wanted to convey what I felt on the dance floor through music, and so, and how I heard music. And I used to always love this quote by Martha Graham: "It's not your place to judge the work, but to do the work." And that gave me the confidence to make a record. Because if you silence your voice, that voice will not be heard at any other time, in any galaxy, in any form on the planet. So, my favorite part of making music is the process, and play. Yeah. I think we forget how to play as people, and I think when you're starting out as an artist or DJ, you're so worried about who's going to hear it, how can I make a living out of it, what am I going to do, what labels are going to be on, what club should I play, how am I going to get, but just, we forget the element of play.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Was it Derek Carter? Did he give you a chance early on
no,
in
he
your
kicked me off his
career?
turntable.
Because it was like classic music company, him, Luke
him
Solomon,
Luke
and Rob
Solomon.
Mello.
Yeah, so my first remix came out on Classic. I did a remix of Music for Freaks called He's Angry. And so, yeah, they're my family, and that's where I've released all of my music. I believe in long-term relationships, and we just get each other. Like, we're just all misfits. All my friends were all freaks and misfits, and I say that with love. And we're just all weirdos. And so, if you go back to the Classic catalog, it's kind of weird records. It was the first label that put out Beaumont Plage, Isolé, the first Herbert records. Teef Schwartz was on that label. They introduced a lot of weirdos to the world, and so we were just making records for our friends, and yeah.
So when you went into the studio to do that remix, who did you work with?
Me.
I
did it all on Ableton.
Did that on all
I didn't think it
Ableton?
was good enough, and then they said, "Oh my God, we love it," and I was like, "Really?" Because you don't. I didn't have anything to bounce it off of.
Yeah.
It was just, I just did the best that I could do, and they liked it and they believed in it, and yeah, it was a happy accident.
Then you did The Best of Both Worlds. You
I
had
did
that
the best
album.
of both worlds. That was a play on
Yeah.
words, because I'm just going to be real here. When they talk about trans women, it's the best of both worlds, and I was like, oh, how can I turn that into a positive? I'm going to call that my album, and for those that get it, will. So, but that album was my very first album. I made some of those songs on Ableton too. A lot of that stuff was just me making, and I also had the Pioneer RMX 1000, so I would take loops and just filter things, and it was a lot of just play, and that's how it happened. And I'm a huge Little Lewis fan, and so that album was sort of like a dedication to all the music that I sort of loved in the clubs, and it was a fun record to make.
Now, Black Girl Magic comes out next month, and it's been in the process of coming out for over 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I started writing this record in about 2019 with Luke and Chris Penny. They would come over to my current home base, Berlin, and it was a tribute to 2 albums, Tourism by Danny Tenaglia and Little Lewis's Journey into the Mind of Little Lewis. That was what I thought it was going to be. But then during the course of writing it, the pandemic happened, George Floyd happened, and the violence against trans women was escalating. There was so much cultural stuff happening that this album sort of took a different direction, and it was about protest and self-love and agency and how can we get through it was just so much going on that how are we going to survive the pandemic, but then the George Floyd, and then and so I had to get it out somehow, and that's what Black Girl Magic came about, and yeah, I'm very proud of this work.
Yeah, it's a great album. I've been listening to it all this week. It's really great.
Thank you.
The first track that you've picked out is It's Quiet Now, featuring Dope Earth Alien.
Yeah.
And this one has a really deep kind of house sound. What were you trying to achieve with this song in particular?
This is probably my favorite song on the album and the most personal song on the album for me. I was in a very toxic romantic relationship that I couldn't leave. I don't know if some of you may have been there or not. And so I turned my pain into a song. And I wanted all of the sounds to be very emotional, and I wanted there to be a bit of melancholy to it. So all of the sounds is quite low, but the lyrics are quite uplifting. And so so for me, this song was about liberating myself. And toxic relationships aren't just romantic. They can be friendships, jobs, whatever you want to be. But It's Quiet Now talks about when you finally have the courage to walk away from something that is no longer good for you, life blossoms. And my career, I'm not joking, I think I left this relationship in October of 2015. In 2016, my life changed. Literally, like 6 months later, my career changed, my life changed. And so that was what the song was written for. And there's also a video coming out with this about it's sort of the narrative of trans sex workers and being in these dark places, but coming out of them, and because I think a lot of my work in music is also giving agency to voices that are not necessarily heard in spaces, especially in dance music. So Black Girl Magic is a celebration of being self-determined.
Let's have
I don't mean to sound like I'm on a soapbox, because I'm still that bitch. I still cut up and carry on, but I just try to get through with my music.
I put you in my rear view, living blissfully. I'm golden, sunlight's jealous of me. I put you in my rear view, living blissfully. Stuck in my head, going over and over the things that we say.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Is that your first time hearing that out in public? With
No, I've been road testing that record. I've actually been ending my sets with that record and acting a fool in the booth. It's so special. I love writing songs. I think it's really, fun to write long. That's what I love about disco. It was about the human experience. So I try to write songs about the human experience.
And their vocals. It's
I am not afraid of a bitch singing in the club.
Exactly. It's so nice.
I know it's not cool or hip, but I love
think
vocals.
it is. I think it's wonderful.
I live in Berlin. You're not supposed to have vocals at the club.
But I love that. And how do you choose? I mean, there's all different vocalists on this record.
Yes.
And so what is it like working with vocalists? How do you choose a vocalist for a certain song, and how do you interact with them to get the best out of them?
Well, I mean, it's really collaborative. I mean, we write the music, and I try to work with singers and singer-songwriters. Mm-hmm. So I get the best of both worlds. Yeah. But, we wrote this, like I said, during the pandemic, so there was a lot of Dropbox going back and forth and sharing music and ideas and things like that. And then when I was able to travel, we'd come to London and we would go into the studio and cut vocals and things like that, because contrary to popular belief, a lot of making music is hanging out. You just hang out, and then ideas flow, and then you just get up and start singing or talking shit, and then, making music is play and fun. But I wanted to work specifically on this album with women of color, queer people of color, because of what was happening in culture. So that was really, and I wanted the songs to be reflective of the time that we were all going through. I mean, because we can all have our boxes, but it was the human experience that, that interested me, Mm-hmm.
And you also worked with a couple of collaborators, Josh Cafe.
Josh Cafe, yeah, he's a DJ producer based here in London. He's an amazing artist. We did a song called La Femme Fantastique, and that was my tribute to Grace.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was my tribute to Grace Jones, Slave to the Rhythm. Have you all heard the album Slave to the Rhythm, the intro, where there's this rhythm is both song and melody? This guy talking. I forget who's the guy that was on.
Paul Morley.
Yeah,
Paul Morley was interviewing her.
Yeah,
Paul Morley interviewed her, and he also wrote her book, I'll Never Write My Memoirs.
So that was, everyone knows that I'm like a Grace Jones freak. So that was my tribute to Grace.
Oh. This next record is Not About You, featuring Hadiya George.
Yes.
And what was your kind of mission with this song in terms of the sounds that you wanted to use and the kind of style that you wanted to come across?
I mean, God, that's like the 17th iteration of that track.
Because it came out in 2020, didn't it?
It came out in 2020, and we're re-releasing it with some new remixes. That was my New York record. I wanted it to there was a really famous club at New York called Cielo in the Meatpacking District. And I was just sort of trying to capture that New York sound that we sort of don't have anymore, of that time in the 2000s, post-French filtered house. And so I wanted it to be a bit tribal with vocals, and the lyrics was basically, from drag queens. Mm-hmm. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's about us, girl. So, taking that, New York was so rich. And so I was just trying to really capture the flavor and sound of New York. with the sonically.
And I wanted to ask you as well, as because you've lived in 3 different cities or more, but you have there's the Chicago sound, there's the New York sound, there's the Berlin sound.
I was born in Chicago, I grew up in New York, and I was rediscovered in Berlin.
Okay, that's great. And in terms
Because,
of
I mean, I'm a sponge, one of the great things about what was sucked about the pandemic is I couldn't live in the world. And I think, that was the really hard part because, it's so important to hear how other people love and party and celebrate and experience music. And so I'm definitely a New Yorker to the core, like New Yorker, like get out the fucking way, New Yorker. Like, go to New York, don't stand in the middle of the crosswalk, people need to cross. New Yorker. I'm that New Yorker. But, it was so rich, like I like to talk about, there was such, the Latin influence. Disco is really Latin music if you really want to listen to it. And so
salsa, soul, yeah.
Then you had the West African influence and then, African influence and then, you listen to India and she's talking about Santeria and, it was so rich. I don't know what to say. Don't be jealous. It was great. I mean, it's great now. I'm not one of those people that live in the past. I'm just telling you my journey. I'm so happy that I was able to live in New York or caught the tail end of New York when it was still really rich musically. And Chicago too. So I'm a combination of everything. And then going to Berlin, hearing really great DJs in Berlin,
How would you say the sounds differ, though? Like Chicago to
Derek
New York
always
to
said
Berlin.
this. Derek always said the difference between Europe and America is Americans are more concerned about how music feels, and Europeans are more about how it sounds.
Oh, interesting.
That's his words, not mine. I agree to a certain extent, but we have these conversations because it's interesting how different people, I always say the music you like is how it was presented to you and how you were exposed to it, and your environment, what clubs were available to you, where you grew up. Like I said, I could have been born anywhere. I was just born in Chicago. But, Berlin has been incredible opening my ears to new sounds and sonics and soundscapes and production techniques. And I've actually learned how to slow music down because, Chicago likes it 130. New York likes it 123, 124. Berlin likes it 118, 119. So, you incorporate all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Chicago sound to me was always like a bumpier kind of sound than like New York. Boom-tee. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you can hear those different kind of influences in your work.
I can't. It just comes in this way, goes out that way. I don't judge it. I refuse to judge my work. It's not up for me. I do it and hope 3 people like it. So.
So let's listen to this one. Hadiya George is the guest
George, Not About You.
vocalist, Not About You.
And it's a sassy black girl record. I wanted a sassy black girl on my record.
I like this record a lot. It is very sassy.
We need more sass at the club.
Can't love somebody else. You like to love yourself. It's not about you. You can't blame nothing on me, 'cause I cannot set you free. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. What you doing? It's not about me. It's about us. Gotta prove it. It's not about me.
There's a lot of Prince in that record.
There's a lot of Prince in that record.
There's
yeah, a bit of sass.
Prince in
There you
that
go.
record.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of Prince in that record. Like the tambourine and the shaker and the snare. Yeah.
And the sass.
And the sass. Well, a lot of times, like I work with Luke Solomon, and he'll come in with drum sounds, and I do a lot of editing, or I'll bring in ideas, or I'm really great at arranging. I'm the arranger in the family.
Okay, yeah.
So Luke is the meat and potatoes. He'll come in with drums, and I like this or I like that, and I'm good with vocal arrangements. I mean, I even did a song with Daje once where I had to sing it to her how to sing it. So. So the process is more like I'll have an idea of a topic that I want to talk about. We'll play around with drums. I'll send him drum patterns or drum loops that I like. And it's really collaborative. He's my Bernie Taupin.
Yeah, Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
it's literally, we write music together. So the process usually starts with an idea, and then even music that we're currently listening to, I'll take a vocal of a record that I like. A lot of happy accidents happen when I'm DJing, like when you're mixing records, and then you'll just get this one blend, and it's like, oh my God, that'll make a great drum loop for a record. We'll be listening to new music. We'll go back and listen to old music. So it's a lot of research, constant research. And like last night I couldn't sleep, so I have a notebook by my bed, so I just sit up and write down ideas. And I bought like $100 worth of records last night on Bandcamp because I couldn't sleep. And I try to emulate a lot of people that I love. Like, I mean, there's no wrong in like emulating your favorite artist. Like, one of my favorite producers in the world is Mr. G. And so I don't think there's anyone that makes raw house records as well as Mr. G. And, so I'll take a little bit of like, he has literally, they should name the ride after Mr. G, because he owns the ride, just that instrument alone. Every record has a ride. And then I'll just like steal a hi-hat from like someone else, or, it's just like, that's the process, you just really, it's gumbo.
It's like a mood board, isn't it? I mean, sometimes when I start to make a track, but you could almost do like a playlist of things that inspire you. It's like a sonic mood board.
It's a sonic mood board, but I also buy a lot of 7-inches. Like, you know what I listen to when I'm not listening to dance music? Fleetwood Mac, Chicago, Carly Simon. My favorite album in the world is Aja by Steely Dan. I listen to from beginning to end, like Deacon's Blues, like Josie, like from beginning to end. I take a lot of inspiration, the Eagles, the Beach Boys. It's great music. Crosby, Stills, Nash, those harmonies. I mean, like, so my mood board is, I can go from like a Dead or Alive record to like Minnie Riperton. Yeah. That's my mood board.
And all those records you mentioned have great production values.
It's all of, I mean, I may say I don't really, but, growing up in New York, as you know, sound was how it sounds. And, vibration is the universe is dance, the universe, the galaxy, the atoms, everything is movement and dance. And so, am I sounding too earthy?
No, you're sounding very cosmic.
Am I starting to sound like Shirley MacLaine now? But no, I just think of, like Derek Carter, we talk about this, the first sound is a human voice, so, vibration.
Well, the first sounds I think we hear are their mother's heartbeat, isn't it?
Depending on your household, I'm sure. I heard "put that shit down" is the first time I heard, but I mean, I actually asked my mom what was she listening to before I was born, because I have such a deep spiritual connection to sonics, and when I'm DJing, I'm not even there. Like, it's the weirdest thing. I'm not there. It's like something takes over me. I don't, because people ask, oh, do you plan your sets? No. I pick a bunch of records I like, and it's like, I don't want to offend jazz people, but it's literally so free form. The only thing I can compare it to is jazz. I don't know what I'm going to play, because and when you go into the studio, you don't know what it's going to happen. It's, you have an idea, and it goes into a different direction.
And what is one of the best lessons you've learned working in the studio?
Patience. Because sometimes you go into the studio and nothing comes out. And you can't force that. You can't force. And then you're going, oh, this sounds great. And tomorrow's like, oh, it sounds like shit. Oh my God, that was a great record. 2 weeks later, it sounds like shit. Or it's not finished. Or, it's you just have to let it take whatever form it's going to take, and not be afraid to let it be what it's going to be. And instead of trying to force it to be something else. So I think I've learned patience and having an open mind. Because the sound you like now, you may not like. Like, I hate stabs. I hate, but then in the right context, it could work. So you just have to be open.
Absolutely.
Oh, and Queen. I listen to a lot of Queen. A lot of Queen.
Yeah.
A lot of Queen.
The next song is Stand featuring
Cor.Ece.
Cor.Ece.
Yeah.
Thank
And that's
you.
a protest song. That was about George Floyd.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell us how this one came about?
Actually, Cor.Ece wrote most of this song. I mean, when I had approached him, Luke Solomon discovered him at a showcase in Brooklyn of soul singers, and he said, "Oh my God, you got to hear this guy. He's really great." And so me and Luke went into the studio and we just started playing beats and chords and things, and we sent it to him, and he came back with this amazing song. Cor.Ece is a multi-talented videographer. He did the video for It's Quiet Now. He's a great singer-songwriter. He's a great vocalist. He's a great performer. He's a really talented guy. So Dropbox was the process.
Well, this one has more of a kind of a, to me,
It's a
more,
protest record.
but it has a bit of a on the sonic side, on the production side. It sounds more like a classic New York house record.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah. On this one,
Is this
like
my
more
Mr.
of
Fingers
a kind of
version?
the musicality that you get out of a New York record.
Well, so this is a house album, but I really wanted it to be a song-based record, and I really wanted to make songs, and I really wanted to have a lot of chords and vocals and instrumentations and strings, and you hear a lot of horn stabs, muted horns, because that was my jazz inspiration. This is the most personal record I think I've written, even though, like I said, it's like Journey into the Sound of Blue Lewis. It was like based on that album because it incorporated jazz, techno, New York house sound, Chicago house. Club Lonely was on that record. Excuse Me, the Sass was in that record. And so that was the blueprint of how I made this record. But Stand was really, I wanted something that was really heartfelt and sonically soulful.
It's very soulful.
I don't think I after this I want to make a jazz record actually. No, seriously, I want to make a gospel record and a jazz record after this.
Oh wow, a gospel record would be amazing.
I mean, I love gospel.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Let's have a listen.
Okay.
Stand.
thank you. There's so much, I hear so much anger in that record when I listen to it. The wailing and the urgency of the vocal delivery and the muted horn. Actually, I actually sent that horn to Luke and was like, what are we going to do with this? It's so it's off key and weird. But yeah, that's my sort of gospel protest song.
It's fantastic. I
Thank
love
you.
it. I absolutely love it. So how would you define or coin the Honey Dijon production style? Tough question. Sorry to lay that on you.
Why do you do that to me? Honest. I don't really. It's hard for me to think in borders like that. I mean, the music that I make always has to be soulful. It's a culmination of all my influences from jazz to rock to disco to new wave, no wave. I just think it's texturally, it's just a reflection of my experience as a human being on this planet. And I just try to, I feel like the movie Alien, where there's this thing in me that just. And actually, like, you know, this is a true story. When I started DJing, I used to not get booked a lot because now it's trendy to have an eclectic DJ. But before, you may know, like, if you stayed in your lane, you played this sound all night, or you did this all night. And I would show up and I would play all forms of music. And so, you know, I didn't get booked a lot, actually, because we don't know which Honey Dijon is showing up today. And so now I'm having the last laugh because I get to put it on wax and have all my inspirations. And so I think my sound, progressive soul. Yeah. I'm taking it from Danny.
Yeah.
It's mine now.
I can definitely hear that.
Yeah.
We have one last song before we let you guys ask some questions. Love is a state of mind,
Love is a state of
which is a
mind.
beautiful, beautiful
Yes,
saying,
yes.
number one. And this one features Ramona Renea.
Yes.
And I love this one too.
You're not going to play the whole intro with
You
the
want to play the intro as well?
The
I like
intro is
that.
great
There's
because it's this really
Camila-
Camila Washington. She wrote this amazing. She's this queer black female poet, and she wrote this amazing poem. And I wanted to always include spoken word on my record, and I wanted it to always, you know, wasn't there Def Poetry Jam back on the day on cable where you used to have all these black poets and stuff. And I just wanted a black lesbian on my record. It's just that simple. And she wrote an amazing poem. So we have to play, and then Love is a State of Mind, because I think the most radical thing that any of us could do is love ourselves.
Absolutely.
So that was what that record is about.
Well, we had, during the pandemic, that really became quite apparent.
Oh my God, you know, during the pandemic, I had way too many mushrooms and started, like, I did this thing called Sweet Pussy Potato Pauline, where I had my own cooking show and I was talking to the vegetables, and I was just like, you can still find it on my Instagram, like, you know, step one, chop some shit up. Because I was high on mushrooms. Because what did you do all day when things stopped?
Yeah.
Mushrooms.
So that's why love was a state of mind.
Love is the state of mind came from mushrooms.
They say love is the message that lives in my core. I dance for love, I work for love, I am love, mi amor.
Enough for everybody. Love and motion, motion. Love is bending. Your heart into mine. Let the music take you high. Through space and time, you will find that love is a state of mind. Love will bring us all together.
Thank you. Thank you. That sounds like a New York record
That
to me,
does sound
actually.
like a New York
But
record.
I still, for me, like, I hear so much of my influence. Like, I love stacking vocals, and that comes from Marvin Gaye. Like, I just love stacking vocals. And I love the call and response of church. And I love the piano. So it's all those. So my production technique is black music.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Thank you for letting me share this record with all of you. I hope I didn't sound too preachy.
No, not
But,
at all.
you know,
Not all. You have
this is
really
a
wonderful
very-
things to say.
This is a very personal record, and it's reflecting of a time that we all experience, and I hope it connects to you in some way. And I just wanted to be diverse.
Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Honey? Yep. Right.
It might be quite deep and philosophical. Sorry.
I'm sorry, my love?
It might be. Oh,
Like-
that's a shout.
Yeah.
It might be deep and philosophical, so I'm sorry if it is.
Okay.
But you mentioned 2015 was a really important year for you.
Yes.
You came out of this toxic relationship.
Yes.
And there was this light bulb moment where
Yes.
everything all clicked into place.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of a moment where you really realised, even DJing or musically, when that really was happening?
When the switch happened after I left this, I got booked. You know, the best way I can describe it, when I took my energy off of something that wasn't working and I decided to put my energy into me, and because now I had space to focus on the work, and I had space to focus on why someone didn't call me back, or why this person didn't show up, or why someone is not in my life the way that I wanted them to be. So instead of focusing on the things that wasn't working, I started to focus on what I wanted to do in my life, and that's when the change started to unfold for me. I started just buckling down, focusing on music, started what kind of music I wanted to make. I became more honest as a DJ because a lot of times I was playing gigs to make a living, And a lot of DJs don't want to talk about this, but the real part is you have to play a lot of things that you don't want to play before you can play the things you do want to play. I had to do a lot of things that I didn't want to do before I could do the things that I am allowed to do now. I had to play parties I didn't like, music I didn't like. I DJ'd on bars, weddings, bar mitzvahs, department store openings. Someone took their shoe off, I was there to DJ. But having said that, when I left that situation, and by the way, I'm very grateful for that because when you go through something, it makes you realize what you shouldn't be doing. And this isn't who I should be. So it actually helped, that pain actually helped me become a better artist and more importantly, a better human being. Because Quincy Jones always said, your music is only as good as bad as the human being that you are. So work on the human being first.
Great advice.
Honey, you're going to have to come to the front. I'm a DJ. I'm deaf.
I might do this. I might go around with the microphone.
I'm deaf. I got earplugs and I'm still deaf.
Here we go. I was just saying thanks to you both for being here. This feels like a massive privilege
thank
this
you.
evening. So you've done so many amazing things and met so many amazing people. So my question is, what's on your bucket list?
My bucket list is to get up tomorrow. You know, I'm just grateful to be able to make a living as an artist. I mean, my bucket list is to continue to be healthy and to continue to create. That's my bucket list. I've traveled the world lots of times. I've been at the highest levels of fashion. I've DJed the best clubs in the world. But, you know, those are external things. And so my bucket list is that I go to the doctor and he's like, you're great. So I can still go out and make money, good. But I think just living is the bucket list, baby. I don't know what to say. I don't really want for much. I know it's crazy, but I just want to, I'm so blessed and I'm so fortunate to be an artist. And so to just continue to create is my bucket list.
That's lovely. In the back, yeah. I might bring this mic back there.
You guys, what is this? We should have microphones all over the room.
Yeah. I'm going to...
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
The worst thing is you could do these things and no one shows up. So thank you for coming.
No chance. You've spoken a lot about your influences from the past.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, what gigs would you go to now? Who influences you now? Who have you got your eye on?
I still go here, like my best friends. Derek Carter always gets me to dance, and Danny Tenaglia always. Mr. G, you know, I did a party at Beams this past weekend, and Mr. G performed, and it was amazing. I'm a hard one to impress, but still my favorites are Derek. And, you know, there's a party in New York called 718 Sessions where Danny Krivet's the DJ, and it's just like a proper New York party. Like, it's multi-generational. It's people from all walks of life. It's all ages. It's all sexual orientations and genders expression. And it's so New York. And the thing that I love about New York is that they're so passionate. It's literally church. And so people are there for the music. So I think for me, those kinds of parties still inspire me, where it's really about the music and then the human connection. And sadly, they're becoming far fewer and between, not because of the people, because cities are being gentrified, capitalism, the internet. You know, our cities are becoming so monoculture. So I really cherish spaces that allow for diversity and church. So, yeah. But that's just what I know. I mean, if you know some underground shit, I'm the first one in line. You know, hey, as an adult working, I don't get to always go out. So, okay, well, you know, yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, hook up, slide into my DMs, boo. Slide in my DMs.
Hi,
Hi.
honey. Just to say, my friends were in Croatia
Yes.
in August at Defected.
Yes.
And we were well, I think the three of us were very.
Thank you.
It's just a most amazing.
Thank you.
DJ set.
Oh,
Ever,
thanks.
I think. Just my question
I take
is.
tips.
Yeah. The question is. No, my question is a bit following off the last person. You said
Yes.
your cities, New York, Chicago, now
But-
Berlin. I guess we're all in London, and it would be amazing if you were here. But have
I
you
am
considered?
coming here.
Yeah. Have you? Well, I guess. Have you considered? Would you consider sort of having your base here? Or?
I am coming here. That's what I meant by that.
Great.
Yeah.
What, to play or to
To live.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes.
God.
Yeah. Well. Someone's house party.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm so good, thank you. Earlier on, you spoke about compromising your creativity
Yes.
in earlier stages of your
Yes.
career. What advice would you give to newer and younger artists who may be in a similar place right now? And, I can imagine there's lots of moments where you feel like, am I doing the right thing?
Oh my
I don't
God.
feel like I'm in my truth. How do you advise people to keep the compass straight and, make people feel like they're in their truth?
Well, that's a very good question because when you brought that up, I was just triggered by all the couches that I slept on. The best way I can say it, if you keep doing the things you don't want to do, that's what you're going to keep getting. If you keep playing the music you don't want to play, you're going to keep getting booked at clubs you don't want to play. And I had to learn that the hard way. Like, literally what you put out is what you get back. So, but also realize, I was doing other things while I was DJing. Like, I was waiting tables, I danced on bars. I did what I had to do in order to do the other stuff. So it's not like you have to do the work. And the work isn't just, I want to be a DJ and I want to do this. Because even being a professional DJ, even when you get to a certain level, it's not what you think it is. I still play a lot of things that aren't necessarily my cup of tea, but it's part of my job. And you have to find the balance of being an artist and also an entertainer, because people are coming to see you play, so it's still the music business. So, but I think the best thing I can say is one of the greatest things for me is that I found my audience. And the way you find your audience is by being true to who you are and playing the music you love and how you want to play it. And start your own party, start your own record label. You do the work, build it and they will follow. But you have to know who you are before you can get anyone else to believe who you are. So that's the best advice I can give you.
Hi, honey.
Hi.
Thank you for the energy you bring to your performances.
Thank you.
My question is, you spoke earlier about self-determination, that feeling that you have in your music. What do you do when you wake up feeling low, when your mental health isn't that great? What do you do to re-inspire, rekindle that feeling of self-determination and keep the fire going?
Sometimes nothing. It's okay to do nothing. Sometimes, one of the greatest lessons that I learned from when I was in therapy was you have to learn to be uncomfortable. You need to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because we live in cultures that there's a quick fix for everything and you're not supposed to feel bad and you're not supposed to do this. So when I'm feeling bad, sometimes I just feel bad, call my friends and tell them I'm feeling bad. And you don't get over life, you get through it. And feeling bad is a part of feeling good. And being insecure is a part of feeling confident. You see what I'm saying? It's the human part of life that you just have to embrace. And so some days I don't do shit. Some days I watch Sex and the City and it's horrible, but sometimes you just have to be still. And it's okay not to be inspired. And it's okay to feel down. I mean, I have days where I don't want to DJ. I have days when I don't want to go into the studio. I'm a human being first. So, I think sometimes it's to not try to numb those things, but understand the source of why you're feeling that way. Is it external or is it internal? Because a lot of times it's other people's limitations that make you feel bad. So you need to get rid of that and then find out what's going on. But it's okay to do nothing. Sit still. Order a pizza. I had one today.
Thank
Case
you.
in point, like last night, I couldn't sleep. I went to bed at 12:30. I woke up at 3 and couldn't get back to sleep until 6. So I used the sleeplessness to look for music or write in my journal. I believe in journaling. I write a lot in my journal. 5 things that I'm grateful for, and then I bitch about all the people I don't like and why I'm not feeling good today, or this gig sucked, or I hate the way I played, or I didn't like this record, or I could have played better. It's a part of life. So, that's just being an artist.
One more question. So, as you've kept moving through your journey, there's an outward journey, there's also an inward journey happening at the same time. And as you've been doing your inward journey and putting that parallel to your outward journey, what are you most grateful for? Like, what are you holding gratitude for every day and just being like, wow?
You're talking to a black trans woman, so the thing I'm most grateful for is that I am sitting here in front of you, and that I survived, and that I never had to do sex work, sell drugs. I wasn't the target of extreme violence like a lot of my sisters are. The fact that I am self-determined and that I can create. So I think the thing that I'm most grateful for and successful for is that I'm here. Everything else is playtime.
Hey, honey, thank you
Hi.
so much for this amazing conversation.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for the beams.
Oh,
And
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, girl. I saw you in the club. Okay.
What I love so much is that you've spoken about so many different art forms in relation to your inspiration. So it's not just the music, but it's the theatrics of the club, it's performance, it's poetry, it's dance. If you were to expand what you're doing into like any other art form, how would you see that play out for yourself? Or how would your sound and your passion for sound translate into other sort of art forms that inspire you?
Well, I mean, I do a lot of different things. I already have my own clothing collection. I curate things besides making music. I want to start my own magazine. So, and I'm sure Colleen, I know her as Cosmo from back in the day, but clubs were, the time of clubbing that I really loved the most is from 1979 to 1985 in New York City. And the reason was because there was such an explosion of creativity between all art forms, the birth of hip hop, disco, new wave, graffiti, art, fashion. There was no. I always wonder if Jean-Michel Basquiat hadn't become a famous painter, would he have been a famous DJ, or would he have been a famous art, musician? And so, I don't. Creativity has no borders for me. And the clothing collection that I do, I just use fabric as a form of communicating subculture, codes and subculture. And I celebrate queer culture and a lot of voices that were lost to AIDS. A lot of my work is based on the creativity that was lost during the AIDS epidemic, because I still feel we haven't recovered. We lost the highly creative people that made the art and the audiences that understood and appreciated the art. 2 generations. Gone. No one was able to pass that energy down. So a lot of I base my career off of just moving in between the social mobility of all these different creative disciplines that I don't separate. Like I said, when I was a kid, I would sit, when I got the Sade album, I would like, who did the hair, who did the makeup, who played on the band, who was the creative, For me, it was just as important, the visual as the sonics, as the story, as what were they saying. And so, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I just, I consider myself a working artist. PR is for people to sell shit. But I mean, for me, I just hope to keep growing. I hope to become a better DJ. I still feel like I'm learning. I hope to become a better musician. The more you live, things change, you change, life changes. So, I don't know. As long as I can get up and do it, it's good. And thank you for playing.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Sylvia, by the way.
I'm Honey. Manners.
So I thought I had a question, but because I was at the Meltdown Festival when you played earlier this year. And
with Grace.
And you,
Yeah.
and you announced that you were moving to London,
Yeah.
but as I've just discovered, it hasn't happened yet.
I just got my card last week, girl.
That's fine.
It took forever.
We're still waiting for you. So I would have asked something about, like, what's your favorite brunch place in London or something like that.
What's my favorite brunch place in London?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'll ask you another time after you spend some
How do you know I don't have one now?
I know, I was just curious
I'll
about...
tell you
like,
my favorite place, Planet Organic. I live in Planet Organic.
Okay. I mean,
End of story. Planet fucking Organic. I get kombucha at Planet Organic, and I'm happy.
Okay, fine. I would have asked, like, what's your favorite detail about London life, but another time.
No, I'll tell you what. Well, this isn't my. You know, I've been coming to London for many, many years. Actually, it's not like my first time here. I mean, I've sort of had this. London and New York have always had this love affair. So I was, one of the first places. For some people, there was a club called Substation South. I don't know if anyone knows about Substation South, but so I used to play there. I played Horse Meat Disco at the Eagle with Luke Howard and all those kids, and so I've been around. But my favorite things to do in London, I go to the Tate. I love the Tate Modern. I go to Donlan Books on Broadway Market. I love books. I like books more than people. That you get all the visual stimulation and they don't talk back. I go record shop. I'm always at Phonica. I love Broadway Market. It's like one of my favorite things. But what I love about London is like there's little pockets of these little villages, and each one has its own identity and personality, and you always feel like there's something cool happening all the time. And I love the creativity here. Fashion is fun. I had to move near the airport because that 2-hour trip from the east to the west is a disaster. That's the only thing, but the Elizabeth line is fierce. The Elizabeth line is a game changer. I'm like, hey, Elizabeth line, I fuck with you. London, one of the main reasons that I wanted to come to London because it was a culturally diverse city. And when I moved to Berlin, I wasn't getting the same energy and swag that I need for my life sustenance. And so there are only 2 countries in Europe that I really feel that energy, and that's Paris and London. And I didn't want to deal with the French, so London.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bucket list. I do have one bucket list.
Okay, go on.
I want to meet Sade. I have not met Sade. That's my bucket list. She's the Greta Garbo of everything. And if I could, I met Grace, and that was otherworldly, but I think Sade for me is the chicest, most beautiful, iconic woman to ever walk the planet. And so if I just could spend 5 minutes with an hour with Sade, I would be so incredible. I would die tomorrow. Huh? I'm Essex? On a farm? I'm plant-based. So, you have her number? You have address? I don't want to stalk her. But no, I think Sade would be like, for me, a bucket list thing. And also, I want to take some vegan cooking classes. I know, nerdy, right? So, yeah. But anyway, thank you guys so much for... Oh, one more.
Well, I didn't ask my question.
Oh, touche.
But, I mean, to be honest, you might have answered it because it was going to be, is there anyone you would love to work with going forward?
That's such a difficult question because there's so many different artists that do different things that I would like to work with. If I can make a record and work with someone who I love very much, it would be Patrice Rushen. Yeah. She's just next level insane for me. So Patrice Rushen.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much,
you.
honey, for your time and for, all of your very wise words and insights into your music and into your musical history. It's
Thank
really
you.
been a joy to
Oh.
sit here chatting with you. I know it has been for everybody here as well.
Thank you.
So thank you also to all of you. Thank you to
Yeah.
honey. I also would like to thank Audio Technica and Danley Sound Labs for making this event happen because, without them we wouldn't be able to do this. So a very huge thank you to them and to the Color Factory for hosting this for us tonight as well.
And can we have a round of applause for all the great work Colleen is doing for women in the industry and keeping it real and taking a stand in this patriarchal, corporatized stuff. So let's have a round of applause for Colleen.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for listening.